It's been said that journalism is writing the stories that people don't want told. Everything else, it's just PR. Well, here at 1819 News, we're into journalism and telling those stories that people don't want told. And we're bringing on Apryl Marie Fogel, our investigative journalist, to tell some of those stories that people didn't want told. We have an incredible culture here in the state of Alabama, but our politics and public policy don't reflect the people of Alabama. Media drives culture. Culture is what drives politics and public policy. Welcome, everyone, to 1819 News, the podcast. I'm Bryan Dawson, CEO of 1819 News, and host of this here podcast, where we are in pursuit of a free and flourishing Alabama every single week. This episode is going to be as entertaining as it is informational and educational, heavy emphasis on the education, as I'm bringing on our investigative journalist at 1819 News, Apryl Marie Fogel, to talk about some of the stories that she's worked on as our investigative journalist. She's done a bang-up job. She's angered many, which is kind of our thing, and she fits right into that mold of talking about the things that you're not supposed to talk about that need to be talked about. She's really good at that. And so very glad to have her on the team. She's doing a wonderful job, and I'm going to welcome her into the show, and then I'm going to sell you some stuff, and then we're going to dive into the podcast. So Apryl Marie, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me crash your office today.
Yes. She did the radio show from my office, which is literally right on the other side of that wall. And we got to do an hour together, and it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Yep. Enjoy it. If I wasn't running the business, I would love to do radio, but I just don't have time for it. It's just, to me, it's the most fun. It's the most fun.
Radio, I didn't even know it would be where my heart is.
Yeah.
And I ended up on a long-term filling in for somebody while they had cancer treatment.
Yeah.
And that short term turned into a little bit longer term as he took longer to recover. And then it turned into my own show. And it is by far, it was the career turn I did not see coming, but I love it.
It's a bug. And I got into the radio on the business end, not the talent, right? And even on the business end, there's a certain type of people that are in that industry, and they say once you get the radio bug, you can't get rid of it. And so I came into media through radio, and then have gotten into print journalism, if you want to call it that. But it's all multimedia, and radio I think will always be here to stay. I think that there's something about local radio. The key to radio, what I think is going to die, is nationally syndicated radio.
Yeah.
Rush Limbaugh was the only one that could do it, and Rush Limbaugh said the only person that could carry on his legacy was Laura Ingraham, and she went to TV. And so nationally syndicated radio show, that's a guy who can sit in one microphone and talk to someone in New York City, that's in Oregon, that's in Kansas, that's in New Mexico, that's in Florida, and them all be entertained by you and informed by you. It's not easy to do.
It's really tough.
But what is never going to go anywhere, I don't believe, and the more hyper local it is, so like a Rick Peters or a Sean Sullivan, these guys own their stations. Yep. And it's hyper local because they are in that locale, they are the owners, and they have people who are in and around that know what's going on in those local politics, talking about that is the niche that news talk radio, local news talk radio is they're talking about what's going on right there.
Right.
There's a million media outlets talking about what's going on everywhere, right? What Putin's doing and what's going on in Ukraine and what, there's a million outlets doing that. There's not enough radio stations. So my gut is that all of these amazing signals that Cumulus and iHeart own, I think what's going to end up happening is very similar to Talk 99.5, like what they did here. I think you're going to see that all over. They're going to quit trying to push, Clay and Buck on us. And, I call it Brokeback Radio, but I digress. These horrible national syndicated hosts, they're going to stop trying to force people like that on us. And they're just going to have to be forced to pay people in those local markets to talk about what's going on right there.
That's just what it is. One thing about those locally owned stations, and 93, you mentioned 93.1, you can go to Baumhauer's and hang out with the talent of 93.1. You can go to Baumhauer's and hang out with the listeners of those programs, and they know one another. By the end of it, I think my last day there, people were coming to the station to say goodbye and get hugs and such, and voices that and these are your neighbors. These are the people who, when I'm in the studio studio and I'm sick, they're bringing me chicken noodle soup.
Yeah.
You're not doing that with national personalities,
Correct.
right? You're not having that. Same with Jeff Poor. He's on vacation right now, and his listeners are messaging me about watching his images and knowing who he is. And there's just a very different feel for the ability to say, oh, they're opening a store. They're going with here.
Yeah.
Talking about, hosting, where I know in 1819 is hosting a candidate forum, being able to say, my local outlet is covering my local elections, and there's something very cool to that.
And that is the heart of 1819 News as well, is there's a million media outlets focusing on the national, that are focusing on Trump, that are focusing on, whatever foreign thing, Israel or whatever. How many news outlets? And the answer is none.
Right.
Let's just telegraph that. The only other people that are doing anything similar to what 1819 News is doing is Alpha News in Minnesota, that they focus purely on Minneapolis. So they're not even focused on Minnesota. And you want to talk about a target-rich environment. Doing investigative journalism, it's very heavy video investigative journalism in Minneapolis, and they're doing the Lord's work there, and they are amazing. And then we focus on our state. And so there's not a lot of other people doing what we're doing, which is focusing closer to home and doing, I would argue, we have the talent level. Obviously with Jeff, we pulled him from Breitbart, right? And he was with Tucker before that.
Yeah.
So you have a national talent who's taking their gifts.
That was a genius move.
local.
I kind of wonder how you did that.
It's a long story about how awesome I am and good decisions I make, but we're not going to talk about that today, Apryl Marie. No, I'm just kidding. I did promise them I was going to sell them something. And so I'm going to sell them something. I actually don't have anything to sell except unless Smart Water wants to sponsor the show. I don't think they do. Maybe they do. I don't know. We're a bit controversial probably for Smart Water. So, but I will say if you guys like 1819 News, as we talk about the importance of focusing on local and knowing what's going on, if you're in Orange Beach, we're doing a debate between Tony Kinnan and Jeff Boyd. No one else is doing that. We're talking about what's going on in Hoover. We're talking about what's going on in Vestavia. We're talking about what's going on in Montgomery and Mobile. And we are focusing on, city councils, county commissions, state legislature.
That's 7 city councils.
Yes, it's unbelievable. And so to be able to do that, it requires support. And so you guys, and it sounds weird that I'm saying you have the privilege of supporting us. I mean that, though. I can say that boldly and say, look, we are citizen-supported news, and you guys get to be the citizen in the citizen support. And when you support us, yes, you get cool merch. Yes, you get access to special behind-the-scenes content. We'll probably record some of that today. But more than anything, you guys get to be a part of us shining light in darkness, us exposing corruption, us making our state better for future generations. You guys get to be a part of that. So please go become a member today, 1819news.com. Go to the top. There's a button that says Become a Member. Click it. Membership starts as little as $5 a month.
Do they hear that noise when they click it?
I think so.
Yeah.
There it is. Yes.
If not, we should make that happen.
Yes. I'm sure the software engineers can
get right on that.
That's right. Go there. Like I said, membership start as little as $5 a month. We'd love for you to sign up for more than that, but we take what we can get. So please do that now. Don't delay. Fear of missing out. How can I insert some of that? If you don't do it now, you're going to miss out on this incredible behind the scenes content me and Apryl Marie Fogel are going to record.
Oh, and you don't want to miss that.
That's right. There it is. Okay. Back to the content. So I want to open with the story of how you and I got acquainted. We did not get off on the best foot. And it's humorous because people are like, man, Apryl Marie's working at 1819 News. I said, yes, and it's amazing.
That was so much fun announcing that, by the way.
Yes, it was good. And so it's kind of a cool full circle, and it's one of the problems I think that we have in Alabama is we have great people doing good work. And oftentimes we can start to point the gun at each other rather than who our actual enemies are.
We're siloed.
Yes.
We end up in our own little silos. Like it's me against the world. I've been against incumbents for so long. And then people coming around and also don't mind speaking out against incumbents. And you're like, wait, what's happening?
Yes. And so this is 3.5 years ago. We're rolling out 1819 News. There's this shroud of secrecy on who is 1819, where do they get their money, and nobody knew. There's just this media outlet that all of a sudden shows up and has all these reporters, is writing on all this stuff, and they've got this podcast. And they're getting on radio. Like, who are these people and where did they come from? It was a lot of people that were like, what's going on? And I completely understand that. And my friend called me and said, hey, I heard, do you know who Apryl Marie Fogel is? Well, yeah, I'm familiar with her. And he says, okay, well, I heard she's going to write a hit piece on 1819. You should probably just give her a call.
And I owned my own outlet at the time. We'll put that out there.
Yes. And so I reached out to Apryl Marie and said, hey, this is Bryan Dawson. heard you might be, writing a piece on 1819, specifically a hit piece. And I wanted to just be an open book. And she said, well, I wasn't writing a hit piece, but I hope you're still an open book. I said, yeah, hit me. She goes, who are your donors? I said, I'm not going to answer that. But other than that, I will tell you, well, why is that? Is because in order for 1819 News to work, we have people who financially support us that imagine if, we'll just say Bubba Copeland, which is also comes full circle in our story and how we kind of got acquainted. Something like that happens, and we have a bunch of advertisers advertising in 1819 News, and you have, I don't know, just pick a car dealership that's advertising with us. One, if you have a car dealership in Birmingham, well, we're talking to people in Mobile, we're talking to people in Huntsville, we're talking to people in Auburn, so it doesn't do them any good. So that's the problem. But then the other thing is, when you cover a story like Magic City Acceptance, like you did, or you talk about Bubba Copeland like we did, now all of a sudden that car dealer is going to have all of their cars set on fire.
Right.
And so
the left is crazy that way.
Correct. And so in order for us to function the way that we do, we protect the identity of our donors. The people who are in here that know who we are have a pretty good idea who those people are. They're great people, but we're not going to put that out there for our enemies to get destroyed. So anyway, I thought I would cover that. So you asked that, and I said, well, I'm an open book on everything else. You're like, okay. And so we get into a conversation, and I got to feel what it feels like to be the people at Samford. I got
you were in the hot seat for a minute.
In the hot seat with Apryl Marie, and I'm like, this is not fun. And she just peppered me with questions, and she's like a pit bull. And I was like, wow, this is not fun or comfortable. And at the very end of it, she's like, who is your editor? And I kind of went into it, and how we made the decision. And the last thing she said before she hung up, she said, well, I'm just telling you, Jeff Poor needs to be the editor of 1819 News.
Yep. I heard what you wanted to do, who you wanted to be.
Yep. And at the time, Jeff had left Yellowhammer to come, write a couple articles, a week for us or whatever, like on a very small basis. And she said that, and it hit me, and I'm like, Jeff's never going to leave Breitbart to come be an editor at 1819 News. But it planted a seed, and shortly after that, we started, we searched the nation. I've never told this story. This is good. We searched the nation for an editor. We reached out to all of our contacts. We have lots of contacts all over the country in the media world. Scrubbed the nation looking for someone, got tons of applications and everything else. But the people that we really wanted to be our editors got on our website and saw Jeff Poor on our website and said the same thing that Apryl Marie said, like, well, why isn't Jeff your editor? I'm like, well, he's never gonna leave Breitbart to be our editor. I mean, he wouldn't do that. And I said, well, I'm just gonna go see him. And so we have the job posting. We were hiring for an executive editor before we moved him to editor-in-chief. But so I go down to Fairhope and I sit down and have lunch with him. And it was unbelievable because what Jeff said, he'd never heard me give this speech before. And in my speech, what I did, I left on the business end. Jeff would be on the talent end. On the business end, I wanted to take everything that I had learned and all the connections that I had made and all the skills that I have developed in the national media world. I wanted to take it and I wanted to make a difference in my state.
Right.
Okay. So I'm talking to Jeff, and Jeff says to me, Bryan, I've done the DC thing. I've done the DC Bureau thing. I've worked for Tucker. Steve Bannon came and hired me away from Tucker. I've worked at Breitbart, and he loves Breitbart still. He loves Tucker still. He said, but I want to take the skills that I've developed and the connections that I've made, and I want to make a difference for my people in Alabama. The exact same mission. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I offered him the job. We negotiated a deal, and boom, he was the editor, and you were the first person who said. Well,
I love that. And he has done such a great job with the site.
Job.
I mean, he really has. And here's the thing about 1819 is the fearless. If I had to describe, and even before coming on the team, even pre-Bubba Copeland stuff, it was fearless. Y'all were taking up things that I felt like a one-man band taking up before. And so to have you come in with a group of people who have the same ideas, who have the same, all right, this is going to tick some people off, but it needs to be said.
Yeah.
That there's something for the courage to do that.
Absolutely. Courage, and every single person on our team, including you, is willing to put in relentless amount of hours. They're committed to the mission-oriented people. It's not a 9-to-5. This is not a 9-to-5 for anybody. And it starts with Jeff. I'll call him at like 11 o'clock at night, midnight sometimes, and he answers the phone. He's working.
Yeah.
I'll call him at 7 in the morning the next day.
Still working.
He's still working. I'm like, bro, when do you sleep? And he owns the website. He owns the newsroom, and having someone who takes that much responsibility and is that talented is what's allowed us to rise to become who we are.
It's been really fun getting to see the process from this side of it.
Yep, that's awesome. So with that, that happens. Jeff becomes the editor. You, as I said, told me that needed to be the case, and you were 100% correct. And then it kind of comes full circle back to the Bubba Copeland situation. That happens. And again, I talk a lot about that situation. I use it as an example because I think it embodies the fearless aspect that you're describing. It embodies who we are as an organization. Our mission statement, I'm not going to get into the story, is do what's right even if they shoot bullets at you. I've got a story for why that is. Not going to get into it, but that is our motto in that Bubba Copeland situation. Guy that was doing some pretty perverted stuff. We exposed him. Cops go to do a wellness check on him. He gets in a chase with the cops, ends up pulling out a gun and killing himself. Then the national media blames me, blames Jeff, blames Craig, blames 1819 News, blood is on your hands, 1819 News. So they blame...
While ignoring the underlying things y'all were covering.
Yes. And at that moment, there was, I can probably count on one hand, the people who came to our aid. Everyone else threw us under the bus, scattered, or treated us as though we were like lepers with AIDS. You know what I mean? And just like, nowhere to be found, didn't pick up the phone, weren't calling us. And it was people that I believed was unlikely. Leland stuck up for us, and I'm friends with Leland. That one wasn't a surprise. But you and I didn't have the warmest, chummiest relationship, as I just described. And you came out swinging for 1819 News. Every microphone anyone would put in front of you, you defended us. Now, Bubba Copeland's death was a tragedy because no individual should feel that their life has no value, even when they've made grave mistakes, even when they have done some of the things he did. But what was happening that really was the personal attacks on individuals at 1819 News, individuals that even at the time I didn't know well. You know, I had met Craig Monger one time in person, and it was in passing. We both covered the same story. That was it. And I was texting him. I was texting him about home security systems. I was texting him to keep his head up. I started looking into the victims. Yeah. And one thing really stuck out at me was the victims were being ignored and y'all were being vilified. Yeah. And the media had in its crosshairs the wrong bad guy. Yeah. And I wouldn't let that stand. I think I did go on every single radio station. I know I did. I went on every single radio station in the state. I went on Leland multiple times. I went on in Huntsville, anywhere that would have me. And I had tough conversations with people about what this man was really doing and what was happening to you guys as a result of your coverage, because that should never happen. No reporter, no one who's saying this is the news, this is what an individual is doing, no one should have the kinds of threats and the kinds of attacks you guys faced. Yeah. And so in a moment of time, there was no question about this is where I wanted to be and what I wanted to be doing, which was providing cover, even though at the time, and people, you really do have to understand, Bryan and I had no relationship whatsoever, and I'm not sure we had even talked between that phone call with Jeff Poor and this, but it wasn't about that. It was about doing what's right, and y'all were trying to do what was right, and y'all got caught in this. Yeah. You could have never, people have stories written about them, and it doesn't go the way this went, and there's nobody to blame. Yep. And it was kind of the way the left came at us, the way they gave the Pulitzer to Esquire for writing a puff piece about him that was completely factually bereft about what actually happened and all those things. But really the amount of pressure that they applied in wanting to blame a man's death on us, what it ended up doing is it galvanized our team. It galvanized our team. It forced us to come together. And we were already fearless, but after you've been front page news on the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Daily Beast, and the Guardian, and all the biggest media outlets in the world, front page news every single day for 3 weeks, once you've gone through something like that, there's nothing anybody can say or do to you that caught, like, so I used to, like, I would make a post on Twitter. I'm a fairly thick-skinned human by nature. I'm just wired that way. But someone would say something, I'd be like, man, I would, it just doesn't exist anymore. You can literally... The New York Times or AL.com could write, and they have actually written about me, and I just read it and laugh
It's emotional warfare is and they were going after 1819 and 1819 staff because and your families and rather than talk about what he did, and what he did was so egregious. And I talked to some of the women from Smith Station, and I hearing their stories and going, why is the media ignoring this? It had me fired up. It had me really frustrated. And so, I was from a distance, but there was a point in which I was messaging with the majority of the people I knew there. I was messaging with Erica Thomas. I was messaging with Jeff Poor. I was messaging with Craig, and just hang in there, because it was you could see from outside the bubble that you guys were under attack.
Yeah, they wanted that to be, and so. When you had all of those entities that are radical left, godless, secular, horrible, communist, whatever you want to call them, outlets, they were coming after us with full steam. Well, now every person that we'd pissed off inside the state was cheering on these radical leftists, hoping that they would demolish us. And what they ended up doing was creating a monster instead, which is 1819 now.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, because now you've been through it, right? When you're forged by fire, you have gone through, they've said all the things, they've done all the things, everything has come out. And I think eventually, history will show this was a guy who was doing some really awful things.
And you were 100% correct. And what was interesting to me, and I may have just talked about this on last week's podcast, but anyway, we'll repeat it again. When Esquire went to do their little, thank you for our Pulitzer thing on Twitter, it was immediately community noted with this official community note that said this Esquire article, this Esquire feature story that won the Pulitzer completely left out the fact that he was doing all these things to people in his community and using pictures of children and these memes that were encouraging people to transition their gender, that he was writing stories about killing people in the community and having sex with their,
spouses.
Just insane. Community noted, and then thousands and thousands of comments where every single one of the tens of thousands of comments was on our side.
Right.
When it happened, it was about 20% of the people on our side, 80% against us. Now a year and a half has gone by, and people are able to actually figure out what happened. And now it appears everyone sees.
I don't know if you remember, I wrote a piece for my site that was on AL.com omitting the details. They were like a guy who wore makeup, and I was like, and exploited young people, and wrote these things, and did these things, because that's what it was about. It was about making sure people knew the truth, and that goes back to the heart of what 1819 is. It's a hard truth for people to understand. It's a hard, people who knew this man and were deceived by him. I'm sure that was an unimaginable realization. Yeah. But that's not on 1819 News. He made the choices himself.
Yep. Amen. Well, we'll transition here and go into some of the investigative work you've done. You've really kind of become, for sure, the investigative journalist at 1819 News. Craig does a lot of investigative stuff. He does a little bit of both and is moving into that role as well. And that's kind of what we want. We want to have two people that are very seasoned, experienced people diving into turning over rocks. And every single one of our reporters has that about them.
Right.
You have to have your daily content, which is, and we've got great people that do that. And you've really filled a role for us in this realm of investigative stuff. And the first, it wasn't the first story you did, but it's a story that was for sure the most prominent, that drew the most ire, that, ticked the most amount of people off. And again, what I believe this does is there's a lot of people who will say, oh, well, you guys are just a right wing this, or you that, you're conservatives and you're Republicans, or it's like, okay, but who do we go after? When's the last time we went after a Democrat other than Stephen Reed? We don't. We go after the people who claim to be what we are and don't embody it in real life.
Well, and that's a huge thing, is there's a level of accountability, right? We were talking earlier about campaign promises. The mail piece you send out today, the campaign radio ad you run, that's a promise to voters, right? The series I've done, I started with looking into the Hoover City Council and transparency accountability there. Then I went to Magic City Acceptance Academy, and I did 5 to 7 pieces there. And then I went to Samford University and started there. Then Auburn, and then they continue on and on and on. And they will continue on and on and on. What's interesting to me is the mail I got when I did, if I say, for instance, Magic City Acceptance Academy, the mail I got for that was people who were just love that school and hate me. What I got for when I did the Samford series were people that wanted me to be quiet. They loved me. They love what we did. But on the other hand, these are the good guys, and we don't talk about the good guys.
Correct. This is friendly fire.
This is friendly fire.
No. And so here was my thing. And again, I'm just wired the way I'm wired, I guess. I see things the way I see things. You see things very similarly, obviously, to Jeff and everyone else as we began to talk about this, because it did create quite the ruckus. And the donor overlap with Samford in 1819 is pretty heavy, okay?
Which I did not know when I started this.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
What's amazing is you stood by. You were like, we're going to uncover what we uncover, and we're going to keep going.
Yeah, whoever gets hit, he gets hit.
Right.
And this is my thing, and it runs deep with me. So it kind of in my order of who we need to hold accountable the most, and this kind of shows you, is the people who claim the name of Christ. Mm-hmm. Auburn claims to be conservative, then Alabama. You see what I'm saying? Right. It's like, and so people would think, oh, well, we should go after the UAB because they're the most liberal. We'll hit them too, but actually...
But we expect that from them, right?
Correct. That is why this was such a big deal to us, and people couldn't understand. So I'm just going to kind of go on a bit of a monologue on why this was so important to me. And so when you look at the Ten Commandments, so Samford is a Christian.
Yes.
For those listening on audio, I'm doing scare quotes.
Formerly biblical, formerly Baptist. I'm sorry, they still biblical, but formerly Baptist.
Yes. And so that means, and this is big. So in the Ten Commandments, people, the scriptures say, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. And so people in the South, our theology, what that means to them is that we shouldn't say JC or GD. Mm-hmm. And you shouldn't say those things. But what that commandment means is you shouldn't take the name of the Lord. And so the idea of taking the name, so my wife took my name when we entered into covenant together, and she took my name, and now she bears my name, and she's taken my name, and this idea of taking the name. And so as believers, when we get baptized, we're united with Christ, and we take the name of Christ through the covenant of baptism, the same way my wife took my name through the covenant of marriage, okay? Right. So this is what it means to take the name of the Lord your God. It says, don't take his name in vain. So we are to live in a way that is symbiotic and representative of the name of he whose name we bear. And when we bear the name of Christ, we have to live that way, and there's a higher standard. This university, and then where it's outside of the individual who's saved or a church, organizations like, say, a plumber who puts a Jesus fish on his business card and then screws the person.
Right.
Okay, that's taking the name of the Lord in vain. You're using the name of Christ to get the advantages that comes with it, but then not fulfilling your end, okay? And this is what Samford University has done. They have taken the name of the Lord their God, okay? They have taken the name of Jesus Christ, and they've created this institution that lulls all these homeschool parents and Christian parents who don't want their kids to turn into communists,
right?
That are scared to death because they know that rolling the dice and sending your kid to college, I mentioned this on the radio show with you earlier, you have a better chance, your children had a better chance of survival storming the beaches of Normandy than they do going to a secular university and not becoming a communist, okay? That's how bad it is.
How bad it's become.
You have these parents who are sending their kids to Samford because they think it's the last best hope for their kids to go to a university and get a real Christ-centered education that is not going to turn their kids into communists. And so that responsibility, the confidence of the parents who send their kids there, the dollars that they receive, okay, they're trusting them with the most important thing to them is the souls, the eternal souls of their children that are the most valuable thing that they have, and then tens of thousands of dollars in tuition that they're giving, all because they think this is the best hope for their kids not to turn into communists. And then Samford is using the name of Christ to make that happen, and then they're turning around and trying to turn their kids into communists.
It is so incredibly wild to me to see some of the things happening. Because you're right. What is happening on campus is, and I've been on campus. I actually went, whatever my last story was, the DE.
So you went on campus? Because that was your thing. They've never even been on campus.
Yes.
I've been there a bunch.
I literally, you go to the, okay, so as an aside, I make rosaries. This is my new thing. It's my, how I find peace in a world full of kids and chaos, okay? And so I go to the Hobby Lobby right there, the campus is in between my house and the Hobby Lobby. Yes, I've been to campus. I've driven all over campus. I can tell you the different phases of construction that has been occurring since the series began. The image on the last story I wrote was one I took when I had taken my daughter to a volleyball camp and went and took some pictures there. So at any rate, so I'm on campus. These children, and I say children, I'm 44, so I'm aging myself here, but these young adults, they are arriving to campus with open minds and open hearts. Yep. And their parent, and I was there, there's orientation happening throughout the summer, different groups and classes. They're arriving there with open minds and open hearts. And there are programs and places within Samford that is taking that and are exposing it to things that are not of the principles that the school is saying it's doing, okay? Yep. A lot of people, I say a lot of people, let me take that back. A few people, when this series came out, said, why do you hate Samford? Why do you hate these kids? And I said, it's the opposite. I love Samford. I would love for my children to go to Samford. I would love to, when I'm looking at babysitters, I've had babysitters from Samford because I know that they go there as godly kids and they have this faith. What I want for Samford is for them to take the rot out. And the rot is deep. In 2020, they started with the DEI stuff, and they have embedded it. They put this in writing. They were embedding the DEI principles, not biblical justice, whatever that is.
Which is also in that space of, in the 2019, 2020 race hustling that started happening within the evangelical church through Tabiti Anyuwibli, Eric Mason, and these other black pastors were basically bringing white Christians to their knees to get them into a state of perpetual repentance for their historic racism, even though they weren't racist.
And those phrases, historic racism, oppressions, all of the things you see in the toxic culture, that is DEI, that you can find all over Samford University. And so for each of these stories, it's me exposing what is happening. Now, here's the deal. People have said, isn't this a private university? Can't they do that if they want to? Sure, but own it. Tell the parents who are sending their kids to you that that's what they're going to get. Tell them you're going to get professors. And I found one professor who there's no way to describe how this professor feels for people of faith, families of faith, but contempt. She has contempt. She wants you to send your kids at Samford University so she can expose them to feminist liberal propaganda and rap and urban culture and all of this stuff. But she wants to undermine what parents are doing, and the university should not allow this.
Yes. And I want to correct something I said. I said that parents are sending their children there hoping they won't turn them into communists. And I said Samford is intentionally turning them into communists. I want to clarify what I meant by that. When parents entrust, you said it right, the children who show up there specifically because it's the Christian environment with the name of Christ, their hearts and minds are even more open than if they went to Auburn or University of Alabama.
They're not as guarded.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And so they go up with their guard down. And with that money that comes and those hearts and souls and minds that are entrusted to this institution, the level of responsibility to protect those hearts, minds, and souls that are being entrusted to them, to protect them from the stuff that they know that the parents don't want them to be exposed to, that responsibility to protect them exists. But instead of protecting them, they went out and intentionally brought people in who possessed these views that would fall directly under Marxism and communism and secularism and anti-Christian ideology.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. At one point during this series, someone from the university said to me, are you going to just go after every single, basically woke, that wasn't their exact words, but woke professor you have? Because at that point, I had found the woman who was teaching black fat liberation and showing her contempt towards Christian families and these young kids that were being sent to her classroom, said she was intentionally exposing them with the faculty's approval to these ideals of hers. I exposed her. We had the artist who was ripping up pages from the Bible and doing BLM artwork.
And he was a associate professor, or what was his position?
Yeah, he was an associate professor.
He was an associate professor. And again, I don't know the guy. I'm not throwing rocks at him, but I know people who know him, and he has apostatized openly. So he grew up in a Christian environment, said he was a Christian, got the job at Samford, and has since apostatized and rejects the name of Christ, but he's still an associate professor.
And I have heard, here's the thing is I laugh because there was a point in time in which, it was just a few phone calls in which I would hear from Samford and individuals at Samford. And at one point, they were like, where is this coming from? And it's like the bad horror movies. The call's coming from inside the house, people. Yeah. There are parents concerned. There are faculty concerned. There is alumni concerned. Okay. And so my inbox, I mean, I was getting messages from people going, please keep this up and here's something else. Please do this and here's something else. I did not write every story I was given. Some were literally so like, I would look at the information and I would go, what is happening here? And there are departments, you expect for, say, an art department, a liberal arts department, or any of these arts and sciences departments to be a little more leftist. But some of them are just outright wackadoodle. I mean, you've got new age, you've got teachers who are doing new age stuff on a Christian campus and are being celebrated for it. And so, here's what happened, and I won't go too in the weeds on this, but one of my pieces, and it's if you only read one piece, I want you to read the one, and it says, Samford University's website has changed, but has its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is a timeline of what the university has done. And how they baked in from professor, they had a person from every department come in and read these DEI heavy, white fragility style books to own their whiteness, to own up to their how bad oppressors they are. They had the oppression walk. They had these things, and you don't unbake that in the cake because you delete it from the website. Yeah. And that's what they want us to believe. That's what they want parents to believe. It's not on the website
anymore. And the only reason it's not on the website anymore,
I know, is because every time I'd message them about something, they'd delete it from the website. At some point, I would like for the university, probably not this president because he is very, very much into the DEI, but whatever the next president or somebody in leadership can take me to lunch for the amount of website edits I am solely responsible for, because I email them and I go, hey, can you tell me about this? And then this just poof, disappears.
But not before we got screenshots.
And here's the thing is, disappearing it from the web doesn't disappear it from the classroom. Yeah. It doesn't disappear it from, we know that before you are on a hiring committee, you must have implicit bias training. Yeah. We know that they're putting job searches with a diversity category. Unchecking those boxes doesn't change what's actually happening
in the hearts and minds of your faculty and the culture of your campus.
Yeah, and it's out of love. I cannot stress that enough. This is no hate for Samford. It's a beautiful campus, and these children, they come to campus, and I'm telling you, watching them come in, the happy, well-adjusted, very, very different from someone. I've spent some time at UAB Birmingham protesting some of the gender ideology stuff that was happening there. And you can feel warmth and radiance and love and the faith coming off of the students at Samford. And then you go to somewhere like UAB Birmingham, night and day difference. But these kids deserve to be protected from radical ideology as much as those kids do.
Yep, 100%. I have a son who's 15 and he wants to go to law school. I would love nothing more than by the time he's ready to go to law school that we can send him to Cumberland Law School at Samford. That would be the greatest thing in the world to me. So I'm coming from the same place as you. I want a Hillsdale in the state of Alabama.
How great is that?
Or a Liberty in the state of Alabama. And we have the potential for that. And you want to talk about cultural change engine is to have an education of higher learning where you take these hearts, minds, and souls and you're actually giving them a wholesome Christ-centered education and launching them out into the world to take ground for King Jesus. That's what this thing was chartered to do. That's what the people, and instead of taking that vision, I'll go back to that article that you mentioned. That is the premier article. Again, you need to read all of them because they're flipping amazing. But that one, so Samford reached out to me through a mutual donor, very great guy, friend of mine, and said, hey, do you want to meet? And I said, I'd love to meet. I'd love to meet. Like that's my favorite thing to do when this kind of stuff happens is we can get down to brass tacks and talk, and I can show you my cards and you show me yours, and we can get down to true intentions of the heart on the situation and why we're doing this. and said, I'd love to meet. And their kind of number 2 person there, I'm going to throw people's names out, but their number 2 person, not Beck, but someone under Beck, said that, okay, we'll meet. And I said, well, you guys want the meeting? You guys can come to my office. We're downtown Birmingham. Not a big deal. Would love to meet. I was going to bring one of my board members whose family is a very large Samford donating family. And we're all just going to sit down and talk about how we can rectify the situation. And so I live about an hour and a half, but when you leave in the morning and you go through traffic, it's about 2 hours from my house to here. So my wife is giving me my travel cup of coffee and giving me a kiss as I'm walking out the door, literally, and my phone vibrates as I'm about to get in my car, and I look, and it's that donor saying, yeah, Samford said that they're canceling the meeting because they've got something. Right. So they flat out canceled the meeting, and they didn't want to sit down and talk to us. And so that is very bothersome. But the night before I was supposed to meet them, I was a little bit, I mean, it's like we are where we are now, and we can see it from where we are now, and we know that we're right. But when you're in the middle of these things and Apryl Marie's dripping articles, you're like, okay, well, we're about to go meet with these people. I really hope that she's buttoned up, and you always are. But I'm like, CEO of the organization, I'm going to check this. I'm going to look into this and make sure that she has crossed her T's and dotted her I's.
Every document is theirs.
I know.
Every word.
That was the one that I read, and it's probably 1,000 words for the article, but it's the links. Every single link. I went and read every link. I went and checked everything and went and every embedded whatever. And what I found there, I was already frustrated with Samford. I was furious by the time I was done clicking every link and looking at everything else. They went in 2020 and created what it was. It wasn't a
racial justice task force. The task force on racial justice.
Task force on racial justice. They put all these people together, and they went and dug up the racist roots of their past. And they looked at the founders, the people who blood, sweat, and tears built this institution and sacrificed and gave tons of money and built this incredible place. And they said, you know what? They were racist and they owned slaves. How dare they? And so, the Bible, again, going back to those commandments, says to honor your father and mother. And that's your direct father and mother, but it's also honoring those who've come before us. And here's these people who've entrusted this institution to you to make it a Christian institution. And instead of you keeping with what the will of them was, you're now talking about how racist they were, and they fought for the Confederacy and they owned slaves. How dare they? The only way we can fix this is if we go out and bring in a bunch of black communist professors. And that's what they did.
They went out, and you can see a trend, the trend towards hiring diverse thoughts. Yeah. Well, here's the problem. You can find, there's no problem in diversity. I've told people this all the time. I love diversity. I think diversity is great. Forced diversity. We are going out there and we are purposely bringing in people to challenge your kids in the faith you have instilled in them, the faith that they have, that in the name of checking a box, in the name of we're going to have more hires, in the name of we're going to do these things to clean the slate. It was a slate that didn't need to be. You don't need to have somebody out there celebrating, what is it? It was Black overweight liberation, this, that, the other. You didn't need to have that there. There's no reason. There's no reason for book clubs that are not focused on biblical texts at a biblical school that's going to tell you are a horrible person and that the people who were here before us are horrible. So it started with their DEI. And by the way, their president, prior to coming, he was already signed on. Beck Taylor was already all in when he was at Whitworth University. He was already all in on Black Lives Matters and George Floyd's death and all of that. Then comes back to the campus, and you see a series of hires all related to this. This is documented. And I was challenged by somebody who was like, I'm told this isn't happening. And I said, please, for the love of all that's holy, don't take my word for it. Read their words. They've scrubbed the website, but it's available. It's available on 1819 on my stories. It's available on the Wayback Machine. If you don't even want to read it off 1819, read their words, because what they said, and it is on their website today, as you sit here, one of their goals is to integrate initiatives from the Diversity Action Plan into university culture, politics, and procedures. They, to this day, want DEI in every part of the experience, from recruitment to retention to staff hires to curriculum. They want these DEI ideals that we know are poisonous to the mind and the spirit and the body of anybody who has to tolerate it.
Yeah, man, it is. I'm thinking back as you're talking. I'm like racking my brain about all the stories and as they dripped out and what the responses,
Right.
the responses were. And it's funny, Samford, and you're actually the creation of a lot of this pattern that I noticed, and we'll go through some of them. When we bust someone, when we hit someone with that first punch, the next two stories, first 2 to 3 stories, they come out and say, 1819 News is lying. They're
Right.
taking us out of context. Someone paid them to come after us. That's what starts out.
That was this story, right?
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, it is exactly. You can go through it, and whether it was Hoover when we bust Frank Mercado and John Lida,
Right.
And it doesn't matter who it is. We bust them, and they say they're taking us out of context. What they're saying isn't true. We drip out 3 more stories that show that no, it is true.
It is true.
And they're like, you know what? Nobody reads them anyway.
Right.
And then the White House will like retweet one of our tweets, and it's like, okay, well, actually, we're doing the thing that they said we were doing, and it's good.
Right.
And that was this story.
That's where Samford was. It was that's not happening. Then they're exaggerating. Then it goes on, and it was, to me, the thing that kept me going. And we talked about this being with other stories. I was getting messages every single day. Not 1, not 2, 3, literally 3 to 5 personal, long form. This is my experience. This is my experience as a teacher. This is my experience as a parent. This is my experience as an alumni. I've seen this. I know this. Keep going. People who are going to send their kids there. I had someone said I was going to send my kid there, but I'm reconsidering. And I said, I don't want you to reconsider based on my news, okay? I love this university. What I want you to do is, in the time between now and when you plan on sending your son, I want you to call them. I want you to write them. I want you to ask the tough questions. I want you to be a part of this process, because it's not enough you read my news story and then you yank your kid. I want you to read my news story and then help me fix it, because at the end of the day, that's what we want, right?
Correct.
We're not trying to embarrass anybody. We're not trying to put them out of business. What we want them to do is go back to their actual roots, which is biblically, a biblically based
historic biblical Baptist ideology.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so to me, one of the craziest parts about all of this, if not the craziest part, has been the university's response or lack thereof, because it's not that they don't want to do it. They want to call it something different and they want to hide it. And that's not how you fix a problem.
If you're running a ministry or you own a business, my guess is that you've been thinking about starting a podcast for a while now, but for various reasons, it hasn't happened yet. Send me an email. I need to personally connect you with Yonder Child Media. They built this studio in 2 days and tackle all of the production. I just come in, start talking, and leave. It's that easy. They do everything else. Whether you want to record at your business or a home office like they just built for me, you come in, start talking, and Yonder Child will do everything else. Send me an email. That's going to be Bryan, Bryan.Dawson, Dawson, at 1819news.com, and I'd be happy to personally connect you. One more story on this worth talking about that fits into what you're talking about. Didn't want to say that, they didn't meet. They asked for a meeting and then canceled the meeting. Anytime you reached out, everything was always off the record, if they even answered at all.
I had 2 very long off the record calls and then radio silence.
Yeah. And so that's a really weird way of squaring up with the situation. And of course they tried we don't need to talk to them because nobody reads them anyway. And then, obviously all the responses that they were having to do, like where, Beck got up in front of the whole thing, and we had someone there that I don't know who it was that recorded his whole thing where he started talking about biblical justice and how it's actually good that they're doing all this DEI stuff.
Yes.
Right. So they know that they had to do something, but they were trying to ignore us, thinking we were going to go away.
They thought it would go away. And then they thought, the other thing was they were hoping that they could insulate themselves and everybody around them would say, us, this is us versus them. But the problem is that was part of them, right?
Yeah.
Our sources.
We are them.
Our sources,
They are us.
the people who want change, the people who want this rot taken out. And here's the thing is you take there was a plan over years of work of what you're going to do to and put this into all parts of campus. What I would like to see is a plan of how you're going to get it out.
Yeah,
okay?
Don't pretend like it's not there. Give me the reverse racial justice task
right?
force, the meritocracy task force. Can we have that?
This is how we're going to earn your trust, by making sure we recognize there's a problem. I see if at the end of the day it boils down to, and I wrote a story again last week about them hiring somebody, and in their job description was they wanted them to have DEI training. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Matt Walsh DEI stuff. The fact that they're looking to hire someone who's gone through some of this BS training blows the mind. But what I'd like for them to say is, okay, there were things that, and we had one go-between who said, yeah, there were problematic things, but it was by a few people. No, that's not the case. The website, the documents show it was university-wide. The president knew about every single thing about it. What we'd like you to do is take that same level of commitment to and undo it.
Yeah.
Undo it. It will be hard. It will be painful. It will require saying, yes, when all this came out, we were kind of lying about it and hiding it.
Yeah.
But now we're going to change it.
And if they commit to doing that, they're going to come under fire from the left, but they will actually have the support of us and their donors, right?
Absolutely. And that's the thing is there's a scare there when it comes to DEI, when it comes to gender ideology, all of the things, the emotional blackmail of trying to fix what the left has broken. People are scared of that, and they don't need to be.
They don't. No, and we're here to help infuse people with courage. Want to give some context to the last story you wrote. So, what was the time range between your last story and then the last story, right? Was it like 2 months?
So yeah, there had been a couple of months. The bulk of those stories were published in April. Yeah. And then last week, still at it, Samford University looking for program manager with DEI training. Yeah. And so there was a gap, and I think that that they thought we had just stopped looking. And in the meantime, I've got like 3 other stories in the works. Yeah. Because there are other professors there that are about to teach classes that start soon who have no intention of honoring the God that the university says is center. There are still DEI stuff. There's a lot of equity language that the university is requiring. I backed off because it got municipal election time, but this is still an issue. This is an issue for parents. This is an issue for students, and it should be acknowledged.
There was a 90-day ceasefire.
Yeah.
There's a 90-day ceasefire with the hope that they would begin to implement meritocracy with the same aggressiveness they came in and brought in DEI. And I was very hopeful. And then all of a sudden,
no,
you got some of them DEI teachers out there you can bring to the school.
And as you're looking at their job postings, and then there's a incredibly responsive. There is a responsive PR person there, yeah. And he'll occasionally send me things back when I ask questions, and so I asked the question about the job, and the job disappeared
every time.
It's like clockwork. At this point, it's like somebody give me an egg timer for when I email Samford asking for a comment on something, and then that something disappears. One thing that didn't disappear was this ambassador program. They have a ambassador program that is specifically for, it's the diversity ambassadors that in exactly what it sounds like, right? And the Samford diversity ambassadors are committed to learning about and sharing the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity ambassadors also serve as a key resource to underrepresented prospective students who desire to learn more about Samford. But DEI, remember, they said they weren't doing it. This is on their website today. It may not be after this podcast published, but that's on their website today. And I asked if that program had been disbanded. There was no response, but I was able to find images. It does not look like it's been disbanded.
Yeah. Well, great work on the Samford stuff. Phenomenal. And again, drinking liberal tears is not going to win our culture back. And I said this again on the radio. I repeat myself a lot.
I do that too.
Yeah. I said this on the radio with you earlier. I fight not because I hate what's in front of me. And now don't mistake my hatred for DEI. I have a deep hatred for DEI and anything that's communist and Marxist, LGBTQ, CRT, any of the alphabet soup stuff. Hate it. But I'm not fighting because I hate what's in front of me. I'm fighting because I love what's behind me. I love our country. I love my family. I want to protect my children. So my fighting is not coming out of hatred to destroy what's in front of me. It's actually preserving. And because of that,
that's so important.
This is why this is so important. Like I said, drinking liberal tears won't fix the culture. Going to wayward institutions that were built for the right reasons and trying to get them to reorient and get back on track, that's how we win in 40 years and 100 years from now.
Yeah, and they will tell you, well, it's there. Some of their supporters will say it's a little bit here and a little bit there, and that's all it takes. That's all it takes is the professor that they see for a semester who's undermining their faith. What it takes, and by the way, there's not just one professor they're doing it with. There's at least 5, to my knowledge, that are there and intentionally undermining the faith of their students. It is the DEI pervasiveness in their hiring process with the implicit bias requirements. It is all of these different things, and this is a wonderful, beautiful university that I think is a gem. It is truly a gem, and it is being weaponized by people who are not upholding the promise to the students, the promise to the alumni, the promise to the donor, and I hope that they come around to do so.
Yep, completely agree. Let's transition now into another university that is an absolute gem. That is incredible and that is, and so while they might not be an outwardly Christian university the way that Samford is, there's certainly an incredible place and is very likely where I am going to send my son to college, is Auburn University. It's the only university in the state that I will send my child to right now, and I will be preparing him. And that's the difference. If you send him to Samford, you're like, oh, no, they're going to Samford, and that's why that's bad. But Auburn, it's like, okay, it's a secular school. Son, we need to prepare your heart and mind, right?
Yeah, very different.
And so, but Auburn has got its problems. And it's funny, the people at Auburn think we're Alabama fans, and that's why we beat up on Auburn. And then the people at Alabama, the vice versa. And so the people at Alabama think we're Auburn fans, the people at Auburn think we're Alabama fans. And it's like, no, like we love all of our universities. We love all of our football teams. We love all of these people. And again, what if Alabama had institutions, Christian universities, secular universities, UAB, universities with incredible medical training and all this other stuff? Imagine if we could get this rot out of our universities. And we talked about on the radio earlier, leading. What about Alabama being a leader? I think Tuberville's actually this is going to be one of his big issues.
It's going to be good. And I've seen this down in Florida. By the way, I had a dear friend take a job at New College. New College was a leftist, total. I ran a state house race down there when I was in my 20s. I worked as a campaign manager 1,010 years ago. And New College was like the leftist liberal, the woke before woke was cool college. Yeah. DeSantis took over. He's put in conservative, academic, real people, and they've made this college a real college. I think and they have said, we want our colleges to ready people for careers, not to ready them to need safe spaces, not to ready them to go home to a basement. We need to be readying them for the real world. Auburn University is interesting because a lot of these series, they something spurs them, right? Like the started the Samford was the DEI statement, and me doing research on the student groups having to put the non-discrimination statement into their constitution. That started me looking into DEI because the university said that wasn't DEI. And then I was like, oh, that's not DEI. What if I tell this is, right? Yeah. Auburn University, there was a story in the Plainsman, and it was about office chaos in the University Office of Admissions. And what's interesting there is that in a story that was seemingly about a human resources problem, right? Like a bad manager is essentially what it all boiled down to, were a couple of lines, almost as if they were throwaway lines, about illegal actions by this bad manager. So it was like he can't keep staff, he does these things, he overspends, he da-da-da-da-da. Oh, and by the way, he's using DEI-style quotas to attract, to get students in. Well, so I did the first story, and then I started talking to people about, is this possible? Is it possible that Auburn University has somebody in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions who has figured out how to get unqualified people in based on the color of their skin and at the cost of others who he doesn't feel isn't as worthy. And so I had it explained to me the ways in which this could be accomplished if someone were doing it. And I had I did a series of stories after that and I talked to experts. I talked to experts in admissions. I talked in different admissions office, not just theirs. I talked to students. I talked to individuals who knew what was happening. And my mind was blown. Again, we had leaked audio that confirmed some of what we were talking about. And I think we did 4 stories on that, where at the end of the day, I believe that there is going to be a significant change based on what we wrote and what was found out about illegal and possibly definitely unethical practices happening out of these offices.
Unbelievable. And again, the same reason I feel the way I do about Samford. I'm stronger with Samford because of me being a Christian and them using the name of Christ. But Auburn, nothing but love for this university. It's such an incredible place. And you see this happening. And I do think that they're probably going to work to fix this. But the fact that it was even happening is like, guys, how did we see it and you don't see it?
And here's the thing, as you look at, there was a movement around the George Floyd. And you go back and you can kind of timestamp when the left started. It went from behind the scenes, they're doing these things, to in your face, we're pushing them. And some of these colleges went all in leadership. Now, Auburn's had a change in leadership even since they did their initial diversity stuff. And then they just didn't undo it. It goes back to the kind of the Samford idea, which is you spent a lot of energy doing this and hiring these people and giving them these marching orders. You can't just say the state's passed a law, Trump's passed an executive order, the Federal Department of Education has given this guidance, and now it stops. We'll delete it from our website and it's gone. Yeah. No, you deliberately put it there. You deliberately made hires based on wanting it there. Now there has to be equally deliberate effort to get it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. And another, it seems like I'm just picking on them, but it's so bizarre because you look at the people who are on the board of trustees at Auburn, good people.
Oh, great conservatives.
And then you're like, how is this happening? What do we have to do to fix it? Because that's my thing. Another story with Auburn that really killed me was, I think Craig wrote it. We exposed an Auburn City school teacher. The Auburn City school teacher was a music teacher at Drake Middle School, and he was a flamboyant, in-your-face, over-the-top, extreme homosexual with who was like the captain of the drag team in Auburn, whatever that is. But it's obvious what this guy's doing at school,
right?
And it's like he's an evangelist and a groomer. And anyone with two eyes can see that, but here's him, teaching at this middle school, Drake Middle School in the city of Auburn. And, he knows that he's not able to talk about his sexual lifestyle with his children directly in the classroom, but he sees that they all have phones.
Right.
And so he creates a podcast and he creates, he has an Instagram page, and he gets all his students to follow him on his podcast and his Instagram. And on the Instagram page, he's at some strip club getting a dance with, a lap dance from a gay guy in a thong. And the podcast, the entire podcast is dedicated to getting children to question their gender and saying F your parents, all this other stuff. And so we published that story at 2 p.m. and he resigned by 4 p.m. So yay, 1819 got this guy, he's gone. Children are safe. But then we had parents reach out to us the next day. It was a Friday, I think Saturday, had a mom reach out and say, hey, thank you so much for publishing that. Yay, good. But we actually, we've been giving that same information to the principal, to the superintendent, and to the Board of Education for 2 years. And he said there was nothing they could do about it. She's like, I was literally in his office on my knees with tears in my eyes, begging them to do something. And he said there was nothing they could do unless the teacher was having sex with the students. So that guy,
yeah,
he resigns from Drake Middle School, only to be picked up very shortly after by the University of Auburn.
Of course.
Auburn University, excuse me.
Auburn,
yeah. I showed my true colors there. To be picked up by Auburn University. And what is he doing? He's mentoring special needs children.
man,
can't make it up.
You can't make it up, and we've seen that. We've seen that before. Is they move, especially if they're allowed to quit rather than being fired.
Yeah.
There was a teacher who that happened right here in the Birmingham metro area. A teacher, parents had lots of concerns about. I want to say it was a witchcraft related homework assignment, and then that teacher then went to another school because they're allowed to do that. We need our state lawmakers to do something to stop the revolving door of people who are able to leave with. And here's the thing is the administrators should know the difference. The administrators should be able to talk to one another and go, this was big old red flags, because it shouldn't take something like an actual crime against a student before they're like, oopsies, now we're serious about you not being in a classroom.
Yeah, it's sick. And I actually have a friend who has a daughter with autism that he was planning on sending to Auburn because that was the only place in the country he felt like his daughter could go. And she's like 17 right now. I called him, not having any idea that was a situation. I just happened to call him that day. I'm like, brother, how are you? How's it going, man? He says, we're not doing good. I'm like, what's up? And he goes, man, my wife's on the couch crying right now. We read that story about that guy getting hired by Auburn. That was the only place we could send our daughter to get a college education and have that experience with her having, she's like high functioning autism. It's the only place we could send her. And there's no way we're sending her now because of that. And what I want for me telling this story is that the people who are in leadership at Auburn to take their job seriously. Exactly.
You are being entrusted at each of these universities, at every school, K through 12 and through college. You're being entrusted with the most important thing to somebody. And you need to take that responsibility very, very seriously. Yeah. When discrimination is happening, which is what was being alleged at Auburn, you look at what the ramifications, because this isn't a victimless crime, right? For every student who's accepted because somebody decided they should be accepted not on their merits, someone who has worked, who has sacrificed, who has done all of these other things does not get in because there are only so many spots. Yeah. And so when a teacher, when you have a breach of trust, like in that circumstance, and parents aren't comfortable sending their kids, you have, in effect, domino effect, changed their life. And so the administrators themselves, I was so incredibly disappointed in Samford's president's response to this, which was duck and hide and then go off and disparage the outlet and disparage me and do all these things rather than accountability. Accountability would have been great.
So we started the podcast off with me talking about us protecting our donors from people reaching out to them and basically punishing our donors for supporting us financially. Well, Samford is one of the few places that, has a little bit more awareness of who supports us financially because of the overlap. It's the same people, right? Like that's why we're so close, right? There's such an overlap. And I got a veiled threat that they were going to start calling my donors.
Oh, no.
And then they did. And then my donors were like, oh, that's unfortunate. Click.
Well, and that was the same with Auburn. I expected some of the people I talked to with Auburn to be like, okay, there are great conservatives on this board. And you know what was said to me? The great conservatives on the board have no idea this is happening, and you need to let them know. And that's why 1819 has to continue doing these things. That's why there will continue to be stories. There will continue to be stories about Samford. There will continue to be stories about Auburn. There will continue to be stories about University of Alabama, where I wrote the story about the gender ideology non-stuff that's still there. So I got a message that YAF, Y-A-F,
Young Americans for Freedom.
And at the University of Alabama had been rejected as a club because they refused to put gender identity and gender expression in their protected class. They reached out to Steve Marshall, who was like, "Yeah, we're not going to do this, right?" Yeah. And they ended up ultimately they got a pass. So we did a story on it. It went up to I asked the university president's office about it. The university backed off, but gave a one-time pass to this one organization. It turns out a couple organizations had already done it before them, but for whatever reason, YAF was picked on. And but I didn't drop it because the win wasn't that YAF doesn't have to put this in their constitution. The win is no one has to put this in their constitution, and that which, by the way, so we did that story, and they did. They took it out. They said, as of today, we broke it. As of today, nobody has to put this in their constitution that they're gonna follow along with someone's gender nonsense. So then Fast forward, and again, through research, I find that they have this language is still in, because I was like, well, let me make sure. It's not enough for them to tell me it's gone. I want to make sure it's gone.
Sure.
Well, what I find out is it is in the code of conduct for every single student. If you are going to the University of Alabama by signing up for classes and doing all your normal paperwork, you are in fact signing that you are going to respect these categories of gender ideology and gender expression. And as a matter of fact, they go further and they say this is a part of sex. And so you've got in their sex category. Now,
so the civil rights stuff is activated by that.
Alabama law will change this, right? The What is a Woman Act will change this. So long as they don't take those 4 words and move them outside of the parentheses.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to stop them from doing this. So I wrote my most recent story on the University of Alabama was to say, this is here. This is still here. Susan DuBose said, we're going to have to see what happens when the law comes into effect. I'm hoping that before the new class comes in, they take those words out because they're unnecessary. And it's compelled speech for a Christian. You cannot. There are no circumstances in which Jeff Poor can make me acknowledge. He wants to go by Jeff Arena, and he wants me to call him she pronouns. That's just not going to happen. And I shouldn't be up for university discipline if I decide not to.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And I just want to continue to go back to the resounding thing. Like, we are giving these universities the opportunity to fix this, right? Like,
right.
We're making it front and center. Most of the people there don't want it to be this way, but they're scared to death through the emotional manipulation of, people like the ADL and the SPLC and these other organizations.
The queer, there was apparently a queer association. I had no idea that came out, and they did a big old protest, and they stood out on the lawn. They were mad as Hades, all spurred by the fact that YAF got this out of their constitution, and that we continued to push so that everybody could.
Yep. And so you see little glimmers of hope, like the fact that the University of Alabama had Donald Trump give the commencement speech, and it wasn't just any commencement speech. I mean, he went like full bore on trannies and the border and immigrants. And I'm sitting here at the University of Alabama's basketball gym listening to him just like do a full on Trump thing. I was just waiting for like Kid Rock to come like swinging with his guitar and like fire to shoot up or something. It was crazy. And I'm glad that they did that. And I think that's a good move in the right direction. But again, we're bringing attention to something that needs to be fixed, that they can fix. And if they fix it, they're actually not going to face these crazy repercussions that they think they are. The protests used to be crazy. The cancellations used to be crazy. The Biden Department of Justice could put all kinds of weight. They don't have to worry about that anymore.
No. And it's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
Trump is going to give them cover if they do the right thing.
Yep. And right, the protesters, it's like 20, 80-year-olds like out there like with signs, and it's like, is this like the new form of Social Security? Like, what is this? Like,
I experienced that at the Trump Jr. event. I went out there and to get some footage of. I did a story on the protesters at that event, and I was like, what is happening here? There were like 3 wannabe Antifa. There were like a whole group that I'm pretty sure came over on from a retirement community, and then there were a couple of the pink hair, nose ringed up, whatevers. Yeah. And I was like, this is the most bizarre thing. But no, our university presidents, our university boards should not be held hostage to the mean things that are going to be said about them. Yeah. I mean, it's just, and that's what's happening is they're afraid. Nobody, it is not do all of this awful DEI or you're racist.
Yeah.
Even if these leftists call you racist because you are going back to a curriculum that makes sense, back to a hiring process that makes sense, back to an admissions process that makes sense, it doesn't make you a racist because they call you a racist. Yeah. And there's so much fear that you're going to be called a name. And that I think that's what the universities, how they got themselves into this position. And they have to be willing to say, all right, I'm going to take the temporary heat, but it's for the students, it's for the rest of the faculty, it's for the administrators. And in Samford's case, they will weed themselves out, right? Like if a university professor is, I'm going to leave because you are discontinuing this, probably better off without them, right?
Yeah.
University of Alabama, Auburn, I don't see a lot of faculty leaving because of this. And so I really think Alabama lawmakers have given each of these entities an opportunity and a something to say. We've got these bills, we've got this legislation, we've got these things. For the public universities, they've got cover. Yeah. For Samford, the cover is, this is what our students, our parents, our faculty, our alumni want.
Yep. This is good. We'll do an overtime segment. We'll figure out what we can talk about. We can talk about Magic City acceptance in the overtime. We may talk about Hoover. We may talk about some of the other investigative stories.
Oh, so much fun.
And dive in there. But man, phenomenal job on all of these stories, bringing stuff to light, applying pressure. Again, it's applying pressure to good people to do the right thing. It's not us just picking on people who disagree with us politically.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it comes from a place of love. Man, if I hated the people I wrote about, you would definitely know it.
Yeah, it'd be even worse. All right. Well, Apryl Marie Fogel, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. All right, guys, that will wrap it up for this week. We will be doing an overtime segment. If you're not a member, you will miss out on that. And I hope the fear of missing out is so thick that you just immediately get on your phone and sign up to become a member. That's what I'm imagining you doing right now. Do that. But until next time, put your trust in God and keep your powder dry.